Okay, well, welcome to today's presentation, how to sell a home you inherited, and the top four costly mistakes people make. My name is Alex Craig. I am a real estate agent with Century 21 Looking Glass, and today we're going to talk about how you can avoid some of those super costly mistakes that I see homeowners make once they've inherited a home and they've decided that it's time to sell the inherited home. And some of these mistakes that people make, and they can be potentially devastating and super costly to the estate, especially if you are going through probate. So, as I mentioned, my name is Alex Craig. I am a licensed Michigan real estate agent with Century 21. It's just some of my accomplishments, just to let you know that you're in good hands. I've achieved a Rising Star Award just simply because of my production and how good and how well I'm able to help clients market and sell their homes. Over collectively online between my personal account as well as my business accounts, I have five-star reviews on platforms like Google, Facebook, Zillow, Century 21, and more. I'm also a contributor for Inman News and the Young Professional Network for the National Association of Realtors, where I write a lot of content and I contribute content to the industry as a thought leader. Now, I don't share all of this to brag, but to share with you that you're in good hands, and to let you know that of my experience and my qualifications when it comes to being able to help you sell a home that you just inherited, whether you're in probate or you inherited it through a trust or you inherited it through some other means. So outside of real estate, I'm a foster parent, a dad to three kids, a husband. I'm also a board treasurer for a nonprofit that helps children in the abuse and neglect system, as well as a member of the Michigan National Guard in the Army there. I work as an 88 Mike, a motor transport operator, so I get to drive the big trucks and the big vehicles. Just a little bit about my story and kind of how I came to where I am today and how that relates to you and the importance. So I started in real estate in 2016, actually as a marketer. On the back end, I didn't do any of the real estate transaction side of things. I didn't even have my license. However, in 2017, I transitioned into real estate. I got licensed and became my own real estate agent, working out on my own. In 2019, I felt this calling to go back to the military, and so I joined the National Guard. I left my real estate business for about 6 months, and when I returned to a post-COVID world. I actually returned in April of 2020, just a couple weeks or months after the entire state of Michigan had been shut down. So I came back to this post-COVID world, and I had a chance and an opportunity to do some soul searching, trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do when I came back into real estate. And I reflected on some of the experience that I had as a real estate agent and the transactions that I enjoyed the most. And I found that they all had something, very in common, is that they all mostly involved adult children who, through various vehicles, inherited a house. Some of those vehicles, could be probate, trust, conservatorship, or anything of the sort. And that's where I found sort of my niche and my sweet spot in being able to help clients. And so I began specializing and really getting specific on being able to help and sell those kinds of homes. And that's what led me to talking about this topic today. It's built on some of my experience as a real estate agent and the things that I've actually gone through and seen while being in the trenches. And so, my mission has become to help families, specifically those adult children who have inherited a home, solve big problems by, helping by buying houses or helping them sell their house. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you two of the ways that we do that, some of the ways that we help people buy houses, and then some of the ways that we help sell them. But when we're talking about buying houses, I'm not talking about them buying a house. I'm actually talking about us buying a house from them as an alternative way to the traditional real estate brokerage model. And so selling an inherited home isn't as straightforward as selling a traditional home. It's fraught with complications and challenges, especially if you're dealing with the probate side, because it is and can be a long, large, lengthy legal process that you have to go through. So, who is this sort of webinar for? We find that it's for basically anybody who inherited a home through some various means. Some of the things that, like I've mentioned a little bit earlier and previously, include probate, or you've inherited a home through trust, or you've inherited a home through joint tenancy. Joint tenancy is when a homeowner, for example, or a child is listed as a tenant on the title to their parents. This is pretty common. It is a way for a house to avoid going into probate. And upon the death of a uh, parent, the house is solely transferred to that person that is listed as a joint tenant on the property. I've seen this several times in my career, and it's, like I said, it's a common way to avoid probate. And then just some other means and some of the other circumstances in which we helped people. That I haven't really listed could include like power of attorneys, where say mom and dad uh, need to go into long-term care facility or a nursing home, and maybe they're not fully competent for whatever reasons, maybe early onset dementia, or Alzheimer's, and anything could be the case, where uh, the child has become the sole authority for the property, while even though the parents are still alive. A lot of these rules in today's webinar still applies to exactly what we're talking about. So keep in mind that say if mom and dad are moving into a nursing home, and you need to sell the home for cash so that you can provide long-term care for mom or dad. This also includes, even though you haven't directly inherited the home, you are making the decisions for the property. So that's basically the sort of situations or various vehicles in which you might have come to inherit this house, and you need to do something with it, but you're kind of unsure where to start, because most of the times these are very legal processes, and they involve careful observation of the law. In contrast to a traditional home sale, it's usually just call a real estate agent up, list it, sign some paperwork, and that's that. And it's not always as straightforward when you've inherited a house, because there's a lot of legal hoops to jump through, and each different scenario has different legal requirements that we have to follow in order to legally and successfully transfer and basically sell a home. So, you're wondering how to settle the estate, and avoid costly mistakes, and the home you inherited is outdated and needs some repairs. And you're wondering, how do you handle the situations with your siblings? So when we're looking at inherited homes, they often tend to be outdated, just because they haven't been, updated in a few years. Mom and dad were focusing on retirement, and living on retirement incomes. They didn't necessarily have, a whole lot of money to put into upgrading or renovating a kitchen. And so as a result, the kitchen that they still have is from, the 1990s or 1970s. And that can sometimes make it hard to sell the property, because a lot of people are going to go in and think about all the renovations they have to do, and they're going to think about how it's outdated and it doesn't work for them, and so that can make it challenging to sell your home when you're competing with some of the homes that have been flipped, or some of the homes that are recently renovated, or even some of the new construction homes. And so how do you sell an outdated home while still maximizing the profit that is left over, either through the estate, or say for example for mom and dad in the nursing home, or to distribute to all of the other some of your siblings, uh, in the estate. And so those are some of the issues and challenges that are present when we're dealing with an inherited home. And so we'll dive into the 4 costly mistakes that people make that end up sort of minimizing that profit return that they could have otherwise from selling their home. And so here are the four kind of costly mistakes that people make. Mistake number one, selling without the right authority. Like, remember, we talked, this is a legal process. You need to have proper authority, which we'll go into a little bit more detail. Mistake number two, misunderstanding disclosure laws. In certain circumstances, you'll be required to fill out a seller's disclosures, and in other cases you won't. And we'll go through some of the issues with that. Mistake number three, leaving a house vacant for too long. We'll talk about that. Mistake number four, hiring any agent. I kind of already alluded that this isn't a traditional home sale, and you don't necessarily want to just hire any agent off the street who is typically only knowledgeable about how to do a traditional home sale. And then at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you two opportunities to work with us if you see that we're a good fit for you, and hopefully, find a solution that works best for you to hopefully maximize that profit return and provide the least amount of hassle for you. So disclaimer before we get any further, I do want to mention that this webinar is purely informational and is not meant to be legal advice. So if you do have any questions as we go through this, make sure you're consulting an attorney, because this isn't legal advice. It's to give you, that basic foundation to help you kind of maybe navigate where to go. All right. So mistake number one, selling without authority. So the biggest probably mistake I see is it involves probate, or when a parent or relative is deceased and the executor is named in a will. It's easy to believe that because you're the executor named in a will that you automatically have authority to sell the home. You do not. First, when you're dealing with probate, you will need to make sure that that will, for example, is actually valid, and it's good, and that the court upholds it. And if that's the case, then the executor is required to, fulfill or basically, do what the will says, and that could involve selling the property, or it may involve giving the property, say, to another relative or something like that. So again, just because you're an executor and you're the executor named in the will does not mean you have the authority to basically turn around tomorrow and list this property. So in many cases, as I mentioned, you're going to need approval in probate court before you can list any home for sale. This pretty much deals with any home that is essentially inherited, with the exception of typically a home that's in a trust, or a home that has listed as a joint tenancy. And in the case with, if your parent becomes incapacitated, needs long-term care, you need to make sure that you have the proper documentation, such as power of authority, and that power of authority, is and will uphold, will hold up in a court, that the proper procedures are followed to validate that power of authority. So, when it comes to a trust, the home has to be listed by a trustee. In some cases, that could be you, if you inherit, if your parents named you, but sometimes it's not always the case. And so what you can do to prevent this and to ensure that you have the proper authority is to start off consulting with an attorney. And your attorney is going to be able to give you that appropriate path on who actually has the authority to list the property and make decisions on the house. So either way, though, it's a good idea to file documentation early and consult with an attorney early on in the process, so that you can get this started, because a lot of the things will get held up in the court system and the legal system, and you want to make sure that you have the authority to go ahead and move forward with the decisions on the property as early as you can, so that you can get through the process, because we'll go into mistake number three, which is leaving the house vacant for too long a little later on. Mistake number two is understanding seller's disclosures laws. So, the seller's disclosure is a form that a homeowner would fill out to disclose any material defects with the home, and its purpose is to make a buyer more aware of what they are actually buying. Now, there's a lot of confusion whether or not it's required. When it comes to inherited homes, it can get quite murky about whether or not these sellers disclosures are required and they need to be filled out or not. And whether or not they are filled out is actually going to be highly dependent on the vehicle in which this house was inherited. Um, so if it was inherited, through certain means, you won't have to fill it out. But in other means, you will have to figure it out. And so the common mistake that I see, like, if you say a subsection of this mistake in misunderstanding the seller's disclosures, is that people believe they are exempt simply because it's an inherited house. And often that's the result of an inexperienced agent sort of saying that they're not required. I've seen it several times where people believe that they're exempt from filling out a seller's disclosures when in reality they need to be filling them out just because they believe that, hey, it's this house was inherited, I don't need to fill them out, I'm exempt. And that's not the case. I'll tell you the most common case where I see it is usually in like a joint tenancy situation where the son or the daughter is listed as a joint tenant on the property, and when the parent becomes deceased, the property will transfer to the joint tenant, and the joint tenant person then will then go and sell the house to divvy up the assets, and the profit in the home to their siblings and everything like that. And they believe that typically they're exempt because, hey, I've never lived there and I don't know anything about the property and it was an inherited house, so they believe that they're exempt. And when in reality, they're not. And that can open up some, murky legal issues if you don't properly fill those out. So you definitely want to be aware of whether or not you're required to. And typically a good real estate agent is going to be able to help you determine whether or not that's the case. And then the second thing I see as a common mistake is inaccurately filling out the disclosures. You know, this would be the case where they don't know enough about the property, and so they're inaccurately filling it out. So some of the things you can do to avoid these, drastic mistakes, because you certainly don't want to, want these to happen. Because if you fail to fill out the seller's disclosures, or you inaccurately fill out the seller's disclosures, you could find yourself in uh, in court after a closing. You could end up finding yourself having to mediate, pay fees or anything like that to a buyer for anything that could go wrong. And that's not a situation that you want to find yourself in, especially after the estate closes and it's all settled. And because if you're listed, say for example, as the joint tenant, you're the one who's going to be responsible, not your siblings, and it's going to be all on you to figuring it out legally. And so that's a challenging place to be in, but you can do some things to prevent that. And you can communicate any disclosure questions to your agent and your attorney early on, and make sure you follow their advice. Again, a good agent and a good attorney is going to be able to tell you whether or not these documents are required based on your situation and how you inherited the house. Now, we do recommend debt due to potential risk associated with mistakenly responding to the disclosures. Completing the statement even when you do not have to is not recommended. Some people do believe that, hey, it's best to just err on the side of caution. Let me fill this out, but we don't agree with that necessarily, because that's going to hold you liable if you make a mistake on it, which is mistake number 2, right? You inaccurately fill out the disclosures, and now you're held liable, even though you weren't required to fill these disclosures out now, because you did. It's taken as a statement of the condition of the house, and if you've inaccurately filled them out, you're going to be held liable for that, and that's probably not a situation you want to find yourself in. But in either case, I would always recommend, if you're unsure or you feel unsettled about it, is to consult with an attorney if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to decide to fill them out when they're not required. So yeah, let's move on to mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is leaving the house vacant for too long. And the biggest issue with this is that vacant houses are always a concern. It opens up the opportunity for vandalism, for things to break, and for costly repairs to occur. So for example, a house sitting in the middle of winter in Michigan could lead to frozen pipes so easily. And now you have to deal with, a flood and now you have to deal with insurance um, to hopefully get this repaired. And but insurance companies hate to cover vacant houses past 60 days, and then to further complicate things, you have to hope that insurance was transferred or it didn't lapse, and that the insurance bill was continued to be paid because of the your parent or the home that you inherited, the owner is deceased, and so you have to make sure that all of these things are kept up to date. And so the last thing you want is a house sitting vacant for too long. And so I say that because you want to get this process started quickly, especially if you're going through probate. It has a reputation for being a long process, and there's a reason for that because it's typically a long process. So if you don't start early, you're going to make that process take longer, and that's just not a great place to find yourself in. The second thing is to do daily maintenance. And now one of the things that we've been looking at in terms of adding to our company is because we understand that sometimes when people inherit a house, they actually are living in a different state or a different location, and so they don't always have the opportunity to do daily maintenance. And so one of the things that we've been exploring as an add-on service early on, before somebody can list a property, is having like a home watch service. So we'll go in, we'll look at the property on a weekly or bi-weekly basis just to make sure everything is okay with the property. There isn't any damage to the property, and that way it's not sitting vacant for too long. And if any maintenance is required, we can help communicate with you to sort of get that maintenance arranged. If you're from California and you inherited a house in Michigan, we can help you get this taken care of. So yeah, it's great. You can look at us. You can hire an independent house sitting company. But you definitely want to look at this, or if you're in town, make sure that you're coming, and checking out on the house, doing the necessary work to avoid any damage or fines or anything like that to the property. Because the last thing you want is thousands of dollars of fines that are just going to eat the estate, because those will have to be paid out of the estate, and will be taken from your proceeds to distribute, those assets if there are any fines or other legal things like that. So it's best not to find yourself in that water, that hot, sticky water, and just make sure that you're taking care of the property and it's not sitting vacant for too long. So some of the issues that we have is that we have delayed closings, and longer times. So mistake number 4 anyways is hiring an inexperienced agent. I know that it says vacant house for too long, but it's hiring an inexperienced agent. With an inexperienced agent, you're going to have delayed closings because they don't know the paperwork that's required, they don't know the timelines, and they don't know the procedures for doing this. And they probably, so like in a specific case with probate, your real estate agent is going to be need to work very closely with an attorney. And if they don't understand the timelines, they could end up inadvertently delaying your closing. You may have to reschedule court dates and all that sort of stuff. And that's going to go back to, mistake number 3, going to cause a house to sit vacant for too long. It's also longer that you have to pay for the property in terms of, property taxes and all that sort of stuff. Again, eating into the proceeds or the profit from the sale of this house that's going to be left over in the estate. So just be watchful of that. The other thing is a lot of inexperienced agents can be insensitive to the situation. They don't know how to handle the competing interests from the various parties, from the different siblings to the court's requirements to the attorney requirements, and sometimes they can be insensitive to that situation, not very understanding. They treat it just like a normal regular home sale, where they're just dealing with maybe one person or maybe a husband-wife combination, and that's not the case, too. And plus, a lot of times we're dealing with emotional situations where this is the house that the children grew up in, and so there's a lot of memories attached to this home. The home meant a lot to mom or dad, and to do they want to make mom and dad proud, in their honor, and it's a very emotionally charged situation. So it's important to find an experienced agent who can be sensitive to the situation. And then last, the other thing is that like, uh, you know, it's easy to become misguided from an inexperienced real estate agent. Um, I've seen a situation where one of the deceased children, tried to hire an inexperienced agent who encouraged them to do all sorts of unnecessary repairs on the home. And the problem with this was twofold. One was that all of the repairs were unnecessary to sell to begin with. So it wouldn't have really made a difference to do these repairs, and it simply would have ate into the profits of the the deceased children, and there wouldn't have been there would have been less to spread, to disperse of the assets. And the repairs, like I said, they were just unnecessary to get the home sold. But second, is there was actually no authority to be able to make those repairs, because this home was going through probate. And that's another thing that you have to be careful about, and you have to understand is that in some situations and in some cases, you may not even be able to fix the home, because you may need court approval before you're even allowed to do that, before you're even allowed to touch the home. And so that's very, very important to understand. Back to mistake number one, whether or not you have the authority to actually do something. And in some cases, you may not. And so to prevent this costly mistake, it's a good idea to vet your real estate agent. And so you should look at hiring someone who is experienced in dealing with inherited homes. Whether that's probate, whether you're looking at trusts or conservatorship or power of authorities, whatever the case might be. Try to find somebody who has experience in dealing with these inherited homes, versus just your general real estate agent. So, with that said, I want to say that the difference between working with an experienced agent and an experienced agent, and I want to give you the option to sort of work with an experienced team, to achieve a smoother process, so that your timelines are hit and we're maximizing profits, and your hassle factor is the least it could be. Now, don't get me wrong, there are going to be a lot of frustrations still, and there's going to be a lot of emotional situations that we're going to have to confront, we're going to have to deal with. But I always look at it like, kind of like a pilot. Uh, on your flight, you're likely to experience turbulence, and there's not much you can do to avoid turbulence. You're basically going to, you're going to experience it. But the difference is that, a good pilot is still going to get you from point A to point B, without that, with that turbulence, and they're going to be able to respond better to that turbulence. And so that's kind of the same situation with us, because the reality is when we're dealing with the court systems like this and stuff like that, and the law, it can be challenging, and you're likely to experience some challenging situations. But the difference is, a good real estate agent is going to be able to get you to point A to point B, with the least hassle while maximizing the profit, versus an inexperienced real estate agent. And so with us, you're going to have some of that smoother process. You're going to have seamless and direct communication. We're not going to try to avoid contact with you. We're not going to, avoid, the technical stuff of the legal system, and we're going to try to break that down to you in the simplest means necessary, so that you understand exactly what's going on, because chances are this is the first time that you're going through it, and it's going to be the last time that you're going through it. So we're also going to demonstrate empathy in treating you and the home sellers with respect and care, and we're going to give you our expert guidance based on our experience. And so we have two different models to suit your needs. The first one is the traditional brokerage model. It's exactly like you're thinking of, as pretty much any other home sale. The process is pretty similar. We're going to conduct a home value analysis. We're going to list the home. We're going to get the offer, and we're going to accept an offer, and we're going to close. The only difference between this, in the case with like the traditional home sales, there are a lot of legal hurdles that we have to overcome. We have to make sure that you have proper authority to sell the house. We have to look at probate. We have to make sure that we get court approval, because once we get an offer and once we accept an offer, we have to present that offer to the courts and make sure that the court approves it, inside probate. And so there are some technical legal stuff that we have to look at throughout this process, and we're going to be there to guide you throughout that. So, and some of the benefits of working with us is that we have superior digital marketing results. So when we're listing your property, we're optimizing on Zillow, we're optimizing it for SEO, we're doing internet and web marketing to really get that home sold. We know that today's home buyers are mostly searching online, and so we want to make sure that your home is optimized to get the most amount of eyeballs on and traffic on things like Zillow, so that it results in scheduled showings and ultimately, the sale of your home. Also, throughout the process, we're going to give you access to our network of professionals. So obviously, a lot of times when you're inheriting a home, it comes with stuff inside the house that needs to be taken care of. So we can recommend for you, for example, junk removal companies, and some of them through their relationship with us offer discounts for you. And we have vetted these professionals for their quality to make sure that they can deliver and help you through this whole process. And so, yeah, one of the main benefit is that we're going to assist in making the sale painless while achieving the highest price possible for you, so that you have more at the end of the day to distribute if needed or to keep once the estate is all settled. And so, typically, we say, who is this model typically for? We often find this is, for homes in probate because they need court approval. So a lot of times, like I said, mentioned that we're going to have to get an offer, and that offer is going to be accepted, and then we're going to wait court approval on the acceptance of on that offer. And it's also for people who want to maximize their home's value versus, say, decrease the hassle, which we'll go over in our second model. So I want to give you an example of a gentleman we helped. His name is Terry W. Terry was a long time Lansing area resident, and Terry needed to sell his home shortly after his mother passed away. And so she owned a home in the city of Lansing for about 50 years. Terry was listed on title as a joint tenant, so the home went to him upon the death of his mother, and a lengthy probate case was avoided. This was one of the where I mentioned, where a joint tenant, the property is just simply inherited. Now, Terry, he just wanted us to sell it the traditional route. He actually grew up in this house, and he was looking to really maximize the profit that he could distribute to himself and his sister. And so he was really hoping to sell, through the traditional way. And so when we listed Terry's home, we priced it right to start. We had photographer take professional photos, professional copyright to create the real listing description, and we optimized his Zillow listing. And we knew that given the price range, most of his traffic would come from listing aggregate sites like Zillow. And so we really optimized his listing profile so that we could get the most amount of showings online, from online visitors to showings and ultimately a sale. And it worked because we were able to get the highest price for him. It actually went above the appraisal amount, and he was able to net the most amount of money because we accepted an offer that had zero closing costs, and where the buyer paid for any of the repairs that were required for the property and closing. So Terry really was able to maximize the amount of money because this house was in good condition, but it was still outdated, and so a lot of those renovation repairs that you sometimes have to budget for when you're dealing with an inherited house, we were able to help Terry not have to pay for those. So moving on to our second model that we offer it's a no commission as is model. And so the process is a little different. We schedule a time to meet with you or the family members or whoever has the authority for the property, and then whoever else you might need in the decision-making process, because we understand that, while you might have the authority, you also need your sister or your brother or somebody to be involved in the process. And so we visit the home and we provide an offer, within 24 to 48 hours. And then if you accept that offer, we can close quickly, in a few weeks rather than months that it could take through the traditional sale process. Now, there's no fees. We don't charge any real estate fees for this. We close in a few weeks, and it's important to understand that this is an as-is, which means you don't need to make repairs. There's like limited time that your home sits vacant, and we also take a no-pressure sales approach. But basically, what we're doing is we're going to make you a cash offer. We'll buy it as is today, how it is. In the condition it is. I mean, you don't even have to remove the junk out of the house, and we'll make an offer on it and take care of the junk later, once we purchase and acquire the property. So there's really nothing that you have to do for this model. But it's important to understand, this model isn't for everybody. First, it's usually best for people who want to sell and settle the estate faster than going through the long traditional sales approach. And it's usually better when you do not need any authority or court approval through probate, unless like specific circumstances are met. Because there are certain conditions at which the court will accept a lower offer, because this cash as is model is usually not the maximum amount that you can get for the home, because there will be a lot of work in the home once we acquire it, but you don't have to do anything. So it's definitely people who value um, who want to get some of the value from the home without hassle, headaches, and stress. So it's for people who inherited a home. They don't want to clean it up. They don't want to clean it out. They don't want to pay any realtor fees, and they don't want to deal with any of that hassle. They just want it gone. They just want it done with, and that's really who it's for. And when we don't need court approval, usually we're better able to do that. In some circumstances, we can still do it if your house is in, for example, probate, but it just requires some certain circumstances being met. So those are the two options that we want to let you know about. And so if you think that maybe we could be a good fit for you, that we could help you sell your inherited home, we want to, you can get started with us, and you can reach out to us today. There's two contact methods. You can send us an email there at realtor@delinskeygroup.com, or you can give us a call at 517-244-6044. Reach out to any one of us. You can reach out to me. Name's Alex Craig, and we can help you sell that home that you recently inherited. I hope you enjoy this webinar. If you have any questions, do still feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to answer what we can, and if we can point you into the right direction. So, thank you.